This morning, I am going to be talking about Jesus the man. That is why I was reading from World Scripture about the humanity of the founder. I'm going to be talking about Jesus, who he was before human beings made him the Christ, before centuries of infighting and ecclesiastical embellishment, which created today's semi-mythical figure. Despite all of the pomp and circumstance that permeates Christianity today, the truth is, Jesus did not found an institution. He established no churches, nor did he endorse religious hierarchies. He ordained no bishops, no priests, and no deacons. He issued no ecclesiastical doctrines, and he wrote no complicated teachings. Jesus never wanted or intended to start a whole new religion. He made it very clear from the beginning that he was a Jew, and what he was trying to do was reform Judaism. Now, what he did do was he started a movement, and the basis of that movement was his teaching for people to take their love for the Creator and practice that by loving the people around them as much as they loved themselves. Now, Jesus was obviously not the Messiah that the Jewish people had been hoping for. They were hoping for a warrior, somebody who was going to lead the Jews into overthrowing Rome so that they could reestablish Israel as their own independent country again. That's not what they got. Jesus was a social revolutionary. He was not the leader of any army. And his teachings were of nonviolence. Now, Jesus' main focus was helping the average Jew, the common people. And those people looked at him as a teacher, as a sage. They did not look at him as a God. And Jesus did not claim to be God. He frequently used the term, "I am the Son of Man." Now, what that term meant 2,000 years ago was an ordinary man. That is what Jesus called himself. I am an ordinary man. Yes, he was, but he was also a teacher of divine wisdom, admonishing a lost world to change its ways. And sometimes it's hard to imagine how the teachings of this Jewish rabbi came to be the religion that we know as Christianity today. And I'm going to kind of discuss some of the things that influenced some of the changes that have happened in Christianity over the years. And I'd like to start with the year 70 AD, after death. There was a major Jewish revolt against the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire brought its army in under Titus, and they totally quashed that revolt. They basically just decimated everything. They brought in huge battering rams to tear down the Jewish temple. They killed many Jews. There were a few who were lucky and they were able to flee the area. Many more were captured, and they were sent to Rome as slaves. Now, among these slaves, some of them were followers of the way. That is what the early followers of Jesus called themselves, followers of the way. The term Christian came into play at a later date. And initially, it was a derogatory term that was used to insult somebody. Now, these slaves and other followers of the way spread the teachings in Rome. And it was a belief system of the common people. And women had an integral part in spreading the growth of it. They would talk about the teachings of Jesus in the marketplace and at each other's homes. And then they would, in turn, take the teachings back to their husband and the rest of their family. Now, in these early followers of the way, the interesting thing is that women and men were equally teachers of this belief system. Now, of course, one of the biggest changes that happened was when Christianity became the Roman religion. Instead of a belief system where the common average person is sharing it and teaching it, all of a sudden you have got wealthy and powerful Romans who are now running the church and religion. And with that, they brought in more Roman ways of doing things. Now, the Romans, as an empire and as a society, they ruled by force. That's just how they did it. And every peoples were conquered by them, were suffering horribly. They were absolutely brutal about this. And this was how the use of force came into play in Christianity. Now, let's look, for example, at conversion. Converting people of other belief systems to Christianity. Conversion has played a very big part in Christianity. And there are still people today that believe that it is their job to save other people's souls by converting them to Christianity. Now, history shows us that in many, many cases, that conversion involved physical force and violence and even death. But what did Jesus say about conversion? Well, if you look at the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 10, verses 5 through 14, it describes Jesus sending his disciples out to teach the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And he says to them, quote, "Preach as you go, saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out the demons. In whatever town or village you enter, find out who is worthy in it, and stay with him until you depart. As you enter the house, salute it. If the house is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you. And if anyone will not receive you or listen to your words, shake off the dust from your feet as you leave that house or town." Does Jesus ever speak about forcibly converting people from their beliefs to his? No, he never does. Shake the dust off your feet and move on. People must decide for themselves what they believe in. And what Jesus understood was that love and compassion involve no force. It must be by free will. Any kind of force, coercion, persecution, torture, or killing was in direct opposition to love and compassion. And love and compassion was the core of Jesus' message to this world. And yet, more people have been killed in the name of Christianity than any other religion. Let's take a look at the Crusades. The Christians called it a holy war. There was nothing holy about it. The reason for that war was that when the Moors took over Spain, the access to the trade route, the Silk Road to the east, got cut off. And it was hurting people in the pocketbook, especially the rich and powerful, north of there. So this was an economic issue. It was never a religious issue. But you know, it is so much easier to get people all riled up and anxious to go fight and win this war if you tell them they're doing it for God and Christ. Now, of course, did many Moors get killed? Of course they did. Every Jewish settlement that the Crusaders came across was completely obliterated, every person. And of course, many of the Crusaders themselves died. Was this Jesus' teachings? No. He stated in Matthew chapter 5, verse 21, "You have heard it said to the men of old, you shall not kill, and whoever kills shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother shall be liable to judgment." So Jesus is not only saying no killing, but he's also saying if you have anger and hatred toward others, that is every bit as wrong. And the truth is that makes sense. I mean, why do people go out and kill in the first place? Because they have anger and they have hatred toward others. Now, at Jesus' time, if you wanted to insult somebody, what you would do is you would slap their face. That was an insult. Now, if that happened, did Jesus teach his followers to turn around and punch that person in the face? No. No. He said, ignore the insult. Just ignore the insult and turn your face. Like Gandhi, like Dr. Martin Luther King, Jesus' teachings were of nonviolence. Now, where did Jesus stand on discrimination? Now, we all know he focused on teaching the Jewish people, in mostly the common man among the Jews. But he did not exclude others. When a Roman centurion asked Jesus to heal his student, Jesus did so. Now keep in mind, at that time, the Roman taxes were so great that it was impossible for people to pay their taxes and feed their families. I mean, people were suffering. They were starving. And yet, Jesus helped this Roman soldier. The Jews, the common Jews, absolutely hated the tax collectors. These were Jews who worked for Rome, collecting tax money, and many of them became very wealthy doing that, while their fellow Jews are starving. Jesus spent time with Matthew, the tax collector. He helped the lepers and those with mental illnesses when others would not. He spoke up for the prostitute who was about to be stoned to death. The Samaritans were not only considered to be Gentiles and unclean, but the Jews also considered them to be enemies. And yet, Jesus spent time with them, doing healings and teaching them. Jesus cared for and helped everyone. No discrimination. Now, as we look forward to celebrating Christmas this week, let us remember the teachings of Jesus, the man and the teacher. His teachings of love and compassion for all. That we are not only supposed to love ourselves, but we are to love the others around us every bit as much. Yes, we can talk about our belief system with others, but you don't ever try to force anybody to believe something they don't. Jesus is teaching of nonviolence. Now, what historians know, without question, from studying the history of humanity, is that violence begets violence. They know this. The rest of the world doesn't have a clue. They have no clue. They really don't. That is what they know. Every time, that is what happens. So if we want peace on earth and goodwill to men, it is our job to act with peace and with goodwill. Now, does anybody have any questions or comments this morning?